All right, Shalom.
Oh,
All right, first and foremost, we have to give all the praises, honor, and glory unto the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh,
Power,
Ba'ashem,
Ba'ashem,
Yahweh Shai,
Yahweh Ba'ashem,
Ba'ashem, Ruka Kadash.
Rakakoder.
All right, double honors and respect to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule on taught us His truth. I would also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect and the 1/3, and your Israelite foreigners, you speckled birds, scattered across the four corners of the earth, that look like the heathen, but your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose salvation is opened up unto, to you guys, I say shalom. This is brother Salah.
That's right.
All right, and today, man, we gonna be covering this this video right here, on Scott Ritter about Trump's peace plan and seals Israel's defeat. So Esau's basically at his wits end, man. These elites, man. Even Caesar Nero, he might be a little bit in on this, man. But like there's only a few moves they can make, man. Because with their intel on NASA, man, they basically see the fathership, man. Yeah, how they see that Yahushua is on his way, man. With them army of chariots, right? So they get as you see, man, around the world, you see them pushing out this digital ID, man, which is eventually going to roll out with that MOTV, man. So you best believe, man, they're pushing forward with their plans, right? They are purposely collapsing the economy, man, because brother Sarah, you told me that even Nero knew about the prophets, right? Like 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 Nero, right? Or DJ T-47, man. He said something about him, like like that he's aware of the prophets, right? So he knows prophecy is gonna come past, right? So they are, these people are purposely gonna crash the economy, right? And all these nations, they're in on this too, because they're getting ready to implement that MOTB, right? That's why they're about to roll, that's why they're rolling out that digital ID, right? Which is eventually going to lead to what, that charagma, that mark of the beast, and we're gonna say that right now for clarity. We're not gonna call that throughout the video, because we don't want to get censored, but like, that's what it all boils down to, man. Is ultimately that, that charagma. But in the midst of that, right, them talking about peace, right? That, we know that there's not gonna be peace, right? We know that, as soon as they say that, what they really mean is they're gonna wage war in the Middle East, man. They're gonna go to war with, with China, and once they do that, man, it's pretty much a wrap, because at the same time, while they attack China, they already gonna be rolling out with that MOTB, right? And that's after, the famine of the word, and martial law going full force here in Babylon the Great, because most of their troops are gonna be sent over to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, man. So so it's pretty,
Mm.
yeah, so it's pretty much a wrap for Babylon, right? So before we play the video, we're going to open up with First Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3. It says here, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape, right? These motherfuckers, man, they're not going to escape judgment, right? And if you look right here, there's an article headline that says peace and safety. Hamas accepts Trump's peace plan, agreeing to return hostages, right? And we know exactly what that means. There's going to be war. All right, and the brother Sarah, you posted Isaiah 48 verse 22. There is no peace, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshai, to the wicked. Yeah, they gonna be no peace for them. They gonna be no peace for them. When when their kingdom falls, and they definitely gonna be no peace for them. In the kingdom, their only peace days are gonna be the Shabbat and the high holy days. Other than that, they're gonna keep their asses gonna get continually, their asses are going to get continually beat. So that's it, man. And so, all right, so with that, before we play the video, we're gonna read the copyright disclaimer. All right, disclaimer, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All right, so with that out of the way, we're gonna go straight to the video. All right, let me raise up the quality. All right, and just gonna let it play. We're gonna pause every now and then, to bring out some scriptures, but we're gonna play the video. This is my first time. Well, this is me and the brother's first time seeing the video, so we might pause it every now and then, to pull out some precepts.
Scott, on a point that not many people are talking about in terms of why Israel and why there is this ceasefire plan being implemented right now in Gaza. Just before this happened, Scott, Israeli media has noted this, and they've said that parties, opposition parties, and figures like Lieberman, Golan, Naftali Bennett, and others have been meeting to topple the government. And I know you, Scott, have talked about Netanyahu's predicament as well as Israel's overall. How about we start with why this ceasefire, why this peace plan has been implemented and what people might be missing about it as the first phase begins?
Well, first of all, it's a plan that's long overdue. Netanyahu has held on to this conflict because it's in his political best interest to hold on to this conflict. He is in dire political straits on the domestic front. He has he leads a coalition which is not doesn't have peace in its DNA. Let's put it that way. But he's confronted with a political reality in the United States that if he doesn't do what Donald Trump asks him to do at this point in time, American support for Israel is rapidly slipping away.
And before we let Scott speak, let's that takes me to one precept when he said when he mentions when he says when they talk about peace, they're actually talking about war, right? So let's get through peace they shall destroy many. All right, this is Daniel chapter 8, verse 25. And through his policy he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And by peace shall destroy many. He shall stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So yeah, that's ultimately what's gonna happen. What's gonna happen? The end of Esau, man. He's making his desperate attempt for that power grab because he knows that Yahushua is on his way, man. And once they see that fathership, man, they gonna be scared, right? Right, to fight, but they'll still fight, and then when they do that, that's when they get their asses fucking destroyed, man. And put into slavery. So, so we're gonna Scott, continue to speak.
Trump has already publicly noted that Congress is not under the control of Israel the way it used to be, and the whole Charlie Cook, crisis. After Charlie was murdered, you don't have an Israeli prime minister go on TV not once but twice saying, "I didn't do it. We didn't do it," unless there's an underlying political fear that some people will think you did it. And why would he fear that? Because of allegations that Charlie Kirk was turning away from Israel, along with a large part of the Christian Zionist, Christian evangelical movement that had long served as Israel's core foundation of support here in the United States. So Netanyahu, by continuing this conflict, may be preserving in the short term, a situation where he avoids being prosecuted in a court of law for corruption by remaining as prime minister. But he was setting up the conditions for the strategic defeat of Israel, and that would have also brought about his political demise. So he needed to find an off-ramp. And this peace plan, which I want to just quickly point out, is Hamas's demands that have been put in place since day one. So Hamas wins. And that's the other thing we have to recognize. Donald Trump simply packaged it and sold it. So now the question is, okay, so he's gone down this path and he's preserving his American foundation, but what about his coalition? I mean, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and others are threatening to jump ship. And if that happens, then Netanyahu's in trouble because his government collapses. He's no longer prime minister. He can be arrested and he'll die in prison. I think what we have here is an opportunity for Netanyahu to build a new coalition. He's going to have to dump the far right wing, and he can't survive politically without it. But this peace plan is linked to Netanyahu, and I think Trump can play some behind the scenes role. And I think there's a coalition that can be built, by some of the names that were mentioned, Benny Gantz especially, a coalition that can be built in Israel that allows Netanyahu to remain as prime minister for an interim period while this peace plan is being implemented and put forward. And that's also one way that Trump can control Netanyahu to ensure Israeli compliance, because now Netanyahu's political future, indeed his personal fortune, is dependent upon the success of this. And then once the treaty is solidified, it's run through its phases, Netanyahu can go into exile, receive some sort of, amnesty, et cetera. There's a political deal here because on the surface, this is not sustainable. His coalition can't survive. It's about to collapse. And left to his own volition, his political enemies are going to take advantage of that to topple him. So why would Netanyahu agree to this peace treaty? Because it might be the only off-ramp available to him for political survival.
All right. So before we continue the video, so it's pretty obvious at this point. We know for a fact that the small hats, right? Over there in that land, control Babylon, right? We know Bibi Milokowski, or Bibi Netty, right? That he controls Trump in America, and we actually do have receipts for that. Netanyahu, man, he says it himself. So let me pull out that receipt. I believe I have that receipt on Instagram. Let me just find it. Bear with me bear with me a few moments, Salakia. If I can find it, should be here. Let's see if I have it. I'm still trying to locate that receipt. I know I have it somewhere.
Look, what happened?
Yeah. I'm looking for the receipt where. But because I saw it somewhere where they said where Netanyahu says that the small hats control America.
Let me see.
I know I have it somewhere. Let's see where it is. Where is it? Let me see if we can find it.
How much influence does Israel have?
You coming up?
No, I didn't. I thought I saved it though. Like, I mean, oh, yeah. Here it is. I found it. Yeah, call Yo Bashi Mel Shai. I found it all. Yeah,
Oh, where is it?
yeah.
All
Here it
right.
is. Here it is. Yeah. Yeah, all right. So here's the receipt, man. So contrary to what to what Scott Ritter says, man. Trump ain't getting. In Trump, he's not gonna get any leverage over Nitty, bro. Like they answer to them, man. It's pretty apparent. All right, so here it
יש
is.
את הסנאט, יש את הקונגרס, יש את הכוח היהודי שהוא עצום, יותר חזק משהיה אי פעם, יש דעת קהל, יש לנו כוחות כבירים בדעת הקהל שמתנגדים למדיניות הזאת, גדולי הפרשנים. אמריקה לא תכפה עלינו דבר אם לא נרצה.
Yeah, and you heard that right. He says America won't force us into anything. So that's very contrary to what to what Scott says, man, about their peace deal in Hamas. No, bro. It's them. So they can basically wage war in in the Middle East, man. That's what it is, man. That's ultimately the build up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat.
We're in the Middle East.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So that's now that we mentioned it, let's get that precept. All right, all right. Book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 2, and it says here, "I'll also gather all the nations, and I'll bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat." Yahweh Shaphat, meaning Yahweh's judgment, and I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land. Right, and if you look up the word plead, right, in the Paleo Hebrew, that goes back to the word, shafat or shapatyum, or meaning judgment, man, meaning what Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, he's gonna judge these nations, man. In the Middle East once he gathers them. All right. So all right, and Brother Sarah posted here, Second Ezra chapter 16, verse 34. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish shall perish of famine, right? That's basically what's going to take place, right? Because like the apostles and elders have said, man, and like I said in the beginning of the video, these generals, right, these U.S. troops, and they're not going to attack their own people, right? So what's going to happen is, Caesar Nero or DJT, he's going to send them over to fight in the Middle East, but while they're fighting in the Middle East, man, these foreign troops, man, the UN. These troops from Qatar, and you best believe, these Chinese, Russian troops, man, they gonna invade too, because because they're basically bordering in Venezuela, so they're also gonna invade the shores of Babylon, man. You best believe, man. These motherfuckers, man, they gonna kick in American doors, man. They're gonna kill these people. They're gonna ravage the women. They're gonna ravage some of the men too. And I'm not just talking about Esau, man. All these nations, man, they gonna do that too. Because all these nations, man, they get they get down with that most shit, man. So it's about to get terrible, man. You best believe that. And it's as the book of Jeremiah says, it's like a time like never before, man. It's gonna be all out hell, and on top of that, man, they gonna send their AI drones, man. man, the Babylon, the robots, man, the robot helicopters, the robot dogs, the robot drones, man, or whatever, or the ones that are shaped like people, all that, man. Man, it's about to get utterly terrifying here in Babylon the Great. So, all right, so continuing on with the video.
Scott, quickly before I go to the others, you mentioned that this is Hamas's peace plan. Talk about some of those points, those demands that you said were things that Hamas has wanted, because there has been some concern on social media and other places. Some even saying this is surrender. I definitely don't believe that, given how Hamas, I think, was saying that they were fighting up until the very last minute here. But what are these points that you'd like to just illuminate for the audience?
Well, the big thing is the end of the Israeli occupation. Look, let's just be very clear here. There's 1,200 Palestinians in Israeli prison today. One of the Hamas objectives was always get the release of these people, to include Barghouti, who's going to be released. Barghouti's been in prison for, 20 years now? What's he going to see when he comes out? Because somebody asked me that question. What's he going to see? Ruined Gaza. I said, no, he's going to see Palestine. Barghouti's going to leave prison and set foot in Palestine. Hamas won. Hamas did what nobody else could do. Hamas allowed Israel to a standstill. Israel had to accept this deal, and Palestine is being born because of it. And Barghouti's going to step on the soil of free and independent Palestine. That's a Hamas victory. Hamas also is... I mean, that those are the big ones. No occupation, a Palestinian homeland, freedom to the people out. Hamas is a resistance movement, and this is where all the anti-Hamas people can just go pound sand. It's a resistance movement. It's not a terrorist organization. A resistance movement.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now that's that's from what Scott's saying, that's utter bull crap, man. Because we know Israel. Israel's not gonna get Israel's not gonna get Israel's not gonna go get, the occupation. They're not gonna leave, man. They're not gonna leave until the Lord destroys them. With the nukes, right? So you know what? I'm not gonna continue on this video. You brothers, if you want, you can watch the rest of the video. The video titles in here. Danny Halfong, Scott Ritter, Trump's peace plan. Seals Israel's defeat. Netanyahu's done. Yeah, they are, but they're not gonna leave occupation, right? We know what's gonna happen, right? The land's is gonna get cleansed, right? Through the ICBM nuclear missiles, and we know where the missiles are gonna come from, right? They're gonna come from Moab, right? So, right, they're gonna come from Moab and probably Russia too, man. So, because what just recently happened, right, was Milikowski, right? He's basically egging China, thinking that thinking that they can attack China, right? But once he does that, man, that's when they're gonna be finished, right? So we're gonna get this next video. And then we're gonna close out. So
Israel is not stopping. After striking 5 countries, Israel has now turned its warning towards China. Yes, you heard that right, China. On 19th September, Israel carried out massive strikes in Lebanon, targeting multiple vehicles in Tibnan and Ansar. The result was 2 reported losses and 11 people injured. A day later, on 20th September, Israel launched a major operation on a newspaper complex in Sana'a, Yemen. The attack left 31 media workers lost their lives, making it one of the worst assaults on the press in recent history. This escalation followed follows Israel's earlier warning. Any nation sheltering leaders will face
And we know it's talking about Hamas leaders, or that T word that we're not going to say.
action. Now, Israel claims leaders are in Beijing, also accusing China of spreading global propaganda. These allegations have triggered worldwide alarm, and Israel has hinted it may act against China. Yet Israel may be forgetting something. China is the world's second most powerful country. If Israel dares such a move, it could become the nation's biggest and final mistake. So, the question is, will Israel actually move against China? Share your thoughts. Israel
Yeah, and that's basically how the land's gonna get cleansed, right? Because once the least of the flock, once they attack, assault, and bomb China, it's game over for them. It's gonna be game over for Israel, and it's gonna be game over for Babylon, right? Because we know that, right, once China once China, and America, for that fact, once they're in the midst of implementing that MOTB, that's when Israel's also going to plan. And this is me speaking as a man. Like, I'm not prophesizing, but what I think is going to happen, right, is once they're in the midst, of them implementing the MOTB in both in China and in Babylon, right, and basically the rest of the world, that it's like Israel, the small, like, I keep saying Israel, suck it, but them small hats, they're they're gonna see it as China's vulnerable period, right, and then that's when they're gonna attack. But once they do that, man, then that's when they're gonna be utterly destroyed with them nuclear missiles, and then the same thing is gonna happen in Babylon, right. And then at that point, that's when Yahushua is gonna appear, with the fathership, man. So it's over for these motherfuckers, man. All right. All right, Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 45. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua that he hath taken against Babylon and his purpose, and that he hath purpose against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Right. So not only is Babylon the Great, aka America, is gonna get destroyed, man. So is the land of Israel, man. That land is gotta be cleansed too, man. It's not gonna be no deoccupation, no Hamas leader steps out in the Palestine. That's not gonna exist anymore, man. Those motherfuckers, they gonna get fucking destroyed, man. Once the nuclear missiles come, right? All right, Psalm chapter 60, verse 8. Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe. Philistia triumphed out because of me. Right. So the Lord's basically raising up Moab so he can destroy Babylon the Great and in Israel in these last days. So along with Gog, Magog, Russia, Iran, India, man, and every other country that has nuclear capabilities, man. It's basically over for Babylon the Great. So, and this is it is substantiate the point that NATO and the EU is gonna turn against Babylon. We're gonna get Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right. So So the NATO, so NATO and the EU, man, they also gonna send their nukes on the Babylon, right? Because they're just gonna get to the point, where they say, fuck it, man. We're tired of you, man. We know that America, blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and they're also pulling the strings. That's basically holding Europe back, right? Instead of getting that that oil or that gas from Russia, right? They're forced to buy LNG, liquefied natural gas from from America, right? Forcing them, to shut down their factories, right? And force them back, to using coal, man. Which is going to slow down the production in Europe, right? And in the EU, they just they're just gonna get tired with Babylon's bullshit, man. So so these Edomites, they're fucking through, man. All right, so with that, man, we're gonna end off the lesson right there. I hope this lesson has been edifying, to you Akim and you Akwath. And with that, we like to say, Call Halayim La, Abanawa,
Power
Yahweh,
by
Ba'Hashem, Yahushai, Ba'Hashem, Ruka Kadash. All right, double honors and respect to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule on us as truth. I also like to say peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect, and the 1/3. And you like foreigners, you speckled birds scattered across the four corners of the earth, that look like the heathen nations, but you see that goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose salvation is only open up to you guys. I say shalom. This is your brother Salah.
That's right.
Until next time, we say shalom.
Go on.